The laughter started quietly at first. A few smirks. A few whispered comments. Then came the mocking glances that followed a tired single father as he walked across the elegant dining room with his young daughter holding his hand. Neither of them knew that before the afternoon was over, every person in that restaurant would learn a lesson they would never forget. The wealthy guests sitting near the windows assumed they already knew everything about him. They saw his worn jacket, his old shoes, and the exhaustion written across his face. They believed he didn't belong among successful people enjoying expensive meals on a beautiful sunny afternoon. What they didn't know was that appearances can be dangerously deceiving. And what they certainly didn't know was that the restaurant they were dining in existed because of him. Before we begin, if you believe kindness matters more than appearances and that everyone deserves respect no matter their circumstances, please take a moment to like this video, leave a comment, share it with someone who needs inspiration today, and subscribe to LifeLine Hub for more emotional and uplifting stories. The bright afternoon sun stretched across the city streets as Rowan Mercer parked his aging pickup truck several blocks away from Harbor Crown Restaurant. The truck rattled every time he turned off the engine, but it still ran, and for Rowan, that was enough. His 7-year-old daughter, Tessa, sat beside him, carefully holding a small handmade birthday card. It was her birthday. For weeks she had asked for only one thing. She wanted lunch with her father. Not toys. Not expensive gifts. Not a party. Just time with him. Rowan smiled as he looked at her. Life had not been easy since his wife passed away 3 years earlier after a sudden illness. In what felt like a single moment, he had become both mother and father. Every morning began before sunrise. He prepared breakfast. He got Tessa ready for school. He worked long hours. Then he returned home to cook dinner, help with homework, wash clothes, clean the house, and somehow find enough energy to read bedtime stories. Many nights he collapsed into bed exhausted. But every morning he got up and did it all again. Not because it was easy. Because Tessa was worth it. As they walked toward Harbor Crown Restaurant, Tessa's eyes widened. The restaurant was beautiful. Large glass windows reflected the afternoon sunlight. Fresh flowers decorated the entrance. Elegant guests filled the outdoor seating area. To Tessa, it looked magical. To Rowan, it held memories. Years ago, before anyone knew its name, Harbor Crown had been nothing more than a dream sketched onto napkins during late-night meetings. He remembered every struggle. Every sacrifice. Every risk. But those memories belonged to another chapter of his life. Today wasn't about business. Today was about his daughter. Inside, a hostess greeted them with a polite smile before her expression changed slightly as she examined Rowan's appearance. She quickly hid her reaction. But Rowan noticed. Years of being judged had made him familiar with that look. The look that silently asked whether someone truly belonged. The restaurant was busy. Business executives occupied several tables. A group of wealthy investors sat near the center. At another table, senior executives from a major corporation were hosting a lunch meeting with their CEO, Victor Langston. Victor was known throughout the city as a powerful business leader. People respected him. Some feared him. Few knew that he valued character more than wealth. As Rowan and Tessa were escorted to a table, several guests glanced their way. One woman whispered something to her companion. Another guest laughed quietly. Someone commented that the restaurant was lowering its standards. The words were subtle. But they carried sharp edges. Tessa noticed the stares. Children always notice. She squeezed her father's hand. Rowan smiled gently and pretended not to hear anything. He had learned long ago that dignity often means remaining calm when others expect anger. They sat near a large window overlooking the harbor. Tessa excitedly opened the menu. The sunlight danced across the water outside. For a moment, everything felt perfect. Then the comments began again. At a nearby table, several investors openly discussed Rowan as though he wasn't there. They questioned whether he could afford the meal. They laughed about his clothing. One even suggested he must have entered by mistake. Rowan remained silent. Years of hardship had taught him patience. But seeing his daughter hear those remarks hurt more than he could describe. Tessa lowered her eyes toward the table. The excitement she had carried into the restaurant slowly faded. Rowan's heart broke. He wasn't hurt for himself. He was hurt for her. No child should watch a parent be treated with disrespect. A waitress approached and took their order kindly. Unlike others, she treated them with warmth. Her name tag read Clara. She noticed Tessa's birthday card and smiled. The small gesture brightened the little girl's face again. Meanwhile, the CEO's table continued its meeting. Victor Langston occasionally glanced around the dining room. He observed people carefully. Leadership had taught him that true character often reveals itself in ordinary moments. He noticed Rowan's calm behavior. He noticed Tessa's sadness. He noticed the guests making jokes. And he didn't like what he saw. The afternoon continued. Meals arrived. Conversations filled the room. The mockery persisted. Eventually one investor stood and walked near Rowan's table. Pretending to be friendly, he made a remark loud enough for surrounding tables to hear. Several guests laughed. Tessa looked close to tears. Something inside Victor finally snapped. He stood from his chair. The room grew quieter. Many people recognized him instantly. His reputation commanded attention. Victor walked toward Rowan's table. The restaurant became silent. Guests expected him to support the wealthy investors. After all, successful people usually protected one another. Instead, Victor surprised everyone. He greeted Rowan respectfully and asked if he and Tessa were enjoying their meal. Rowan smiled politely. Victor then turned toward the investors and asked why they found it amusing to embarrass a father spending time with his daughter. No one answered immediately. The atmosphere became uncomfortable. The investors attempted to dismiss the situation as harmless joking. Victor wasn't convinced. He explained that true success means treating others with dignity, especially when they can offer nothing in return. The room remained silent. Yet the biggest surprise was still coming. At that moment, the restaurant manager hurried across the dining room. He looked shocked. Almost nervous. Without hesitation, he approached Rowan. Then, in front of everyone, he thanked him for visiting. Guests exchanged confused glances. The manager continued speaking. His voice carried clearly through the restaurant. He explained that none of them would be sitting there today without Rowan Mercer. Years earlier, when the property was abandoned and investors refused to take risks, Rowan had purchased the land and funded the project that became Harbor Crown Restaurant. The room froze. Every face turned toward Rowan. The investors who had mocked him stared in disbelief. Victor looked genuinely surprised. The manager continued. Although Rowan had later stepped away from active business operations after his wife's illness, he had remained the majority owner of Harbor Crown. The restaurant belonged to him. The silence that followed felt endless. Moments earlier people had treated him as though he didn't belong. Now they realized he owned the building around them. Shock spread across the room. The investors' faces turned pale. Several guests lowered their eyes. Others looked embarrassed. But Rowan's expression never changed. He wasn't smiling. He wasn't angry. He simply looked tired. Because the truth was that ownership meant very little to him anymore. 3 years earlier he would have cared. 3 years earlier he had chased success relentlessly. Then life changed. His wife became ill. Hospital visits replaced business meetings. Financial reports became less important than medical updates. Late-night negotiations became nights spent beside a hospital bed. When she passed away, no amount of money could fill the emptiness she left behind. Success stopped feeling important. Love became everything. The room listened quietly as the manager shared how Rowan had continued supporting hundreds of employees despite stepping away from daily operations. Even during difficult periods, he never laid off workers unnecessarily. He ensured families kept their livelihoods. He invested in scholarships for employees' children. Many staff members considered him family. Several employees standing nearby wiped tears from their eyes. They knew his story. They knew his sacrifices. They knew the kind of man he truly was. Victor Langston felt humbled. He walked back to Rowan's table and sat down briefly. For several minutes they spoke privately. No one could hear the conversation. But those watching noticed genuine respect between the two men. Victor later admitted that he had spent years studying successful leaders. Yet Rowan's quiet strength impressed him more than many famous executives. Because true greatness isn't measured by wealth. It's measured by character. Tessa listened as adults spoke about her father. For the first time that afternoon, she smiled proudly. The sadness disappeared from her face. She wasn't proud because he owned a restaurant. She was proud because people finally saw what she already knew. Her father was extraordinary. Not because he was rich. Because he was kind. The investors eventually approached Rowan. Their confidence had vanished. One by one they offered apologies. Some seemed sincere. Others appeared embarrassed by being exposed. Rowan accepted every apology graciously. Holding on to anger would change nothing. But he hoped they remembered the lesson. The lesson that people are far more than appearances. The lesson that dignity should never depend on clothing, status, or wealth. As lunch came to an end, the restaurant staff surprised Tessa with a birthday dessert. The entire dining room joined in singing. Sunlight streamed through the windows. The harbor sparkled outside. For the first time all afternoon, the room felt united. People who had spent hours judging one another suddenly seemed connected by a shared understanding. Life can change in a moment. The person standing quietly beside you may carry struggles you'll never understand. The person wearing old shoes may possess a heart worth more than every luxury in the room. The person you overlook today may be the very reason opportunities exist tomorrow. Before we reach the ending, if this story is touching your heart, please take a moment to like, comment, share this video, and subscribe to LifeLine Hub. Your support helps bring more inspiring stories to people around the world.